Okay, so to continue on from our electrochemical cell lecture, we had this line notation where we take the the reaction and we write it kind of in a shorthand. A lot of these shorthands are made so that you can use like a word processor or in the old days a typewriter. Okay, so you can put things in. You could use subs and supers, but getting into structures, that's really hard to do with a word processor. And so we would be able to write these uh, redox reactions out using this general formula. And these vertical lines represent junctions, these solid liquid boundaries. And so for the cells that we've shown so far, the copper silver cell, it had a salt bridge in the middle. And so here's what we have, the magnesium aluminum cell. And then here's an example with non-metal reactants. And so these are pretty simple because the copper anode is a participant in the reaction, you know, and this is the oxidation side. So what's happening at this end is the copper is becoming copper 2 plus, and on the reduction side, silver, the electrode, the metal piece that's put down into the galvanic cell, is a participant, and the silver is plating out on an electrode. But sometimes you have reactions that are non-metal. So in this case, we have an oxidation reaction, and it's mediated by a platinum electrode. So this is an electrode that's inert. It's not going to participate in the reaction, but it's going to be a source of, it's an oxidation reaction first, and so it's going to be a sink for electrons. It's going to steal electrons from the perchlorate and make it chlorate. Okay, and so this is going to go this way. It's going to go from perchlorate to chlorate. Oh no, this is oxidation. It's going to go the other way. It's going to go from chlorate to perchlorate. Okay, and where'd the electron come from? It came from the chlorine. And so if you're looking at this, you know, it's a chlorine bonded to three oxygens. Each oxygen's a -2. And so, and then you've got this this extra charge here. So what is the partial charge or formal charge on the chlorine? What's that? So you got -6 for the oxygens, and the overall ion is a -1. So chlorine is going to be +5. So you got +5 -6 equals a -1. Got it? And then now let's do this one. So we got plus 7 -8, that's this right here, equals -1. Is everybody cool with that? So our chlorine went from +5 to +7. Where'd those electrons go? They went on to the platinum, and they went through the circuit, and they came in over here, and then they reduced the manganese. Okay, here we've got manganese, we've got a -1 here. Let's do this backwards. We have a -1 result. We have 4 oxygens, so that's -8. What do we have if we're going to make -8 equal a -1? We have to have a +7, right? +7 -8 equals -1. So this is a 7 plus, and this is a 2 plus. So it went down. So these electrons that came into the platinum over here went over here and turned this manganese into this manganese. And that was the reduction. So that's the reduction reaction. Yeah, so just back to like our binary naming from the freshman chemistry days, when you're making like aluminum oxide, right? The oxide, you have -2 for all the oxygens. So so then let's calculate, let's use line notation and do some cell potential calculations. So if you're given this line notation, you've got to figure out what the half reactions are. Well, you know this is a half reaction, the iodine, and this is the other half reaction. You know this is the oxidation, so you've got to write it in such a way where the electrons are on the right. And so this is, we could use that reduction potential table to find the half reactions. And so you'll have a table with all the reduction potentials, and you're looking for the oxidation reaction, you're looking for the reverse of one. So in the table, in this reduction potential table, you'll see I2 plus 2 electrons gives 2I minus. because it's a reduction table. And reduction is gain of electrons. And so all the electrons are on the left side of the arrow in the reduction table. So you would find this and you're like, oh, but that's my oxidation reaction, so you're going to flip it. And then this would have had a plus 0.54 volts. And when you flip the reaction, you flip the sign. And then the reduction reaction, you find that directly in the table. You got the permanganate, and this is the full reduction reaction. Notice the table already tells you the balanced half reactions. It has the number of protons. It's got the number of waters. So that's a cheating way to do it. If you got a good reduction table, that has your two reactions in it, you don't have to go through and balance them because the work's already done for you. You just have to clean it up at the end, perhaps. So in this case, we have 5 electrons needed for the reduction of permanganate, and the iodide only delivers 2. So we've got to do that cross multiplying. And notice we do not do anything to the voltages, and then we add them down. So this is our balanced reaction. We add the cell potentials, and we get the reduction in the oxidation potentials, and we get the cell potential. Okay. So just be sure you find the correct species in the reduction table, and change the sign on the half reaction for the oxidation. Okay. And don't multiply those potentials. Now, if you wanted to make a battery, you could go in and look at all these reduction. We took all of these reduction potentials, and then we put all of these up here too. Basically the same list. You see 1.5, 1.5, 0.8, and so on. And remember we said clockwise paths in this table are spontaneous. So if this one runs forward and we reverse the copper reaction, then we would be subtracting the 0.34 from the 1.5. Okay, and so that's going to give us this 1.16. So gold minus copper is this one right here. And so that's what a gold copper cell would deliver in terms of its voltage. If we wanted a 1.5 volt, so we're going to make our own AA battery. So we want something that our electronics can use. It's expecting a 1.5 volt battery. We could use a silver zinc cell. I mean, it's more expensive than our AA because it uses silver, but still, we could, in a pinch, make a battery out of silver and zinc, and it would deliver 1.56 volts, which fully charged would be fine for our device, and then it would slowly decrease from there. If we wanted to find really cheap batteries, we might do zinc and aluminum, okay? And so that would get 0.9 volts. That's not great, but still a zinc aluminum, pretty cheap battery would be able to deliver 0.9 volts. So this is how they decide which elements to use for the different batteries. Now, if you put those batteries in series, you can add up those potentials. And so here's like a D cell, but this works for AA's and everything. If you put them end to end, see, notice the plus and the minus are paired up. Okay. And that's important. But if you stack them like this, then you add it up. So this would be a 6 volt arrangement of 4 batteries. Now here's some other kinds of batteries, just sort of a show and tell. These are those little button cells. And so you've got zinc plus potassium hydroxide, and then you've got the cathode, manganese plus graphite, and so on. And you've got the outer case, and then you've got this gasket that separates the plus and the outer case. And some of these actually have to breathe. Not this one, but some will have a porous boundary and oxygen will come in through the top. So that's kind of interesting. Wouldn't work in space. Let me finish with the automobile battery. This is the coolest thing. So we have lead at the anode, and we have lead oxide at the cathode. And lead reacts with sulfuric acid to make lead sulfate. And lead oxide reacts with sulfuric acid to make lead sulfate. And so both the anode and the cathode produce lead sulfate and water. So you start with concentrated sulfuric acid, that's battery acid, you have these two different anode and cathodes, and you produce this lead sulfate precipitate and water. So this, you could measure the concentration or even the density of the sulfuric acid to determine if your battery's dead or not, or how fresh it is. And this is the old style batteries. You take the little battery cap off and you put a little dipper in there and suck up the battery acid, and you had three little balls in there, and they were density balls. And if it was a really dense liquid, all three balls would float, and you knew your battery was good. But if you had run your battery for a while, the sulfuric acid went down and the water went up, and so it was more dilute and less dense. So you suck up the balls and only one ball floats. But your battery is really low. If all three balls sink, then it's a dead battery. So this was a really low-tech way of measuring how fresh your battery was. And if you recharge it, you run this backwards and you can generate hydrogen gas. So that's the danger. And my family's had 2 or 3 batteries explode from charging. So it can be dangerous, which is bad luck. It doesn't happen very frequently, but in my experience, it can happen quite a lot. Yeah. Okay. And yeah, it's just a lot of gee whiz stuff in this lecture, really. It's, these are fuel cells. Yeah, the corrosion. We're going to do this energy efficiency stuff in the last fifth of the course, and so corrosion is just reaction with oxygen. And so this should scare us to death. We look at aluminum. It's so exothermic and so spontaneous, but it has an oxide layer that protects it. And so uh, notice this oxygen reaction is above all these metals. So all these metals below this oxygen reaction will corrode, but the metals above it, they won't. So the noble metals are above oxygen, and that's why they don't corrode. So that's why we protect them with the lower metals, and these are anodes that we weld on, and we protect the cathode. So that's called cathodic protection. Okay.